how she's very proud of Lilibet, her daughter, who's finding her voice. I mean, she is so self-obsessed.
Onion kids to be prince and princess. It's beyond a joke. It's beyond a joke now.
Well, it's king and queen of hypocrisy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, bringing the children, the whole thing. I think the king will be very, very wary of meeting Harry. They deceive the public about the birth date and time of the whole event. So, and also, then they say the royals were invited to the baptism ceremony. It was interesting that no one else knew about that.
King Charles III has not seen his grandchildren since June 2022, 4 years ago. He is now fighting cancer while Archie and Lilibet live in California 11 hours away. The last time he saw them, he was not yet king. Look at it as strategy, not emotion. In those 4 years, these two children have had their skin color discussed on worldwide television. Their royal titles were used to market candles, then quietly removed from the website after the story came out. Their names have surfaced in press releases, charity changes, and security battles. They have never done an interview or chosen any of the headlines about them. Still, they have been pulled into what may be the most carefully managed image battle in royal history. Tom Bower recognized the pattern early. For decades, he built his career by studying powerful people, from politicians and billionaires to media bosses. His approach was simple: ignore what people say about themselves. Watch what they do, when they do it, and who gains from it. Focus on timing. When he applied that method to Harry and Meghan in his 2022 book, Revenge, Meghan, Harry, and the War Between the Windsors, the response split almost evenly. Some called it a royalist attack. Others believed he had captured something real and said the couple's later actions kept proving his case long after the book was published.
Those interested in facts will look elsewhere. Those seeking deranged conspiracy and melodrama know exactly.
What many people missed, and what this video focuses on, is that Bower's strongest point was not really about Harry and Meghan as people. It was about a system and how it works. In the Sussex story, emotion and strategy are so mixed together that separating them is extremely hard. That becomes clearest when you look at the children. Archie and Lilibet have no control over any of this. Yet their names, titles, images, and futures have been used by their parents, the palace, and the press in ways that are hard to dismiss as chance. Bower did not mention the children briefly and move on. They run through his whole argument because they show the system at work most clearly. If you track each moment involving Archie and Lilibet, what is announced, what stays private, what gets pushed loudly, and what is handled quietly, a pattern starts to appear. That is exactly the kind of pattern Bower's method is built to find. And it did not end with the book. It continued with the candles, the charity rebrand, and the planned July 2026 visit involving both children that later fell apart. Each new episode followed the same basic pattern. So before going through the events year by year and choice by choice, it is important to be exact about Bower's argument. He was not saying Harry and Meghan are villains, and he was not saying the palace is innocent. He was saying, watch the timing, watch who gains, and watch what is said publicly versus what is quietly corrected. That is the key. Once you see it, you do not read Sussex headlines the same way again. It starts with a pregnancy, an allegation, and an interview watched live by 50 million people. On March 7, 2021, Oprah Winfrey sat down with Harry and Meghan in a California garden, and early in that interview, it became something the British monarchy had not faced in modern memory.
Stories about being blindsided, blindsiding the Queen were very, very damaging to them.
Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor was not in that garden or on camera. He was 1 year old and had no idea what was being said about him. But by the end of the interview, he had become the most discussed child in the world. Meghan told Oprah that while she was pregnant, a member of the royal family, not the Queen and not Prince Philip, raised concerns about how dark Archie's skin might be. She also said there were talks about whether he would receive a title and the security that came with it. The claim hit hard. It suggested racism inside the monarchy aimed at an unborn child. Once said publicly, it was almost impossible to take back. It was also very hard to prove or disprove because no name, date, or exact quote was given. What the Oprah interview did not explain is that Archie's title status was not based on race or on a new decision made during Meghan's pregnancy. It came from royal rules set in 1917, long before Archie was born. King George V's letters patent said prince and princess titles went to the children and grandchildren of a monarch, not great-grandchildren. Archie was the Queen's great-grandchild. So under that rule, he was not automatically entitled to be a prince while she was alive. This was not a special rule for Archie. It was the same rule for every great-grandchild in that position. A 2012 precedent is often raised as a counterargument.
Perhaps the most sensational revelation in the book was the fact that
The Queen did make a special exception that year, giving prince and princess titles to all of William's children, not only the eldest. But that applied because William's children were direct heirs to the throne. Archie was not. Extending this same rule to him would have broken precedent, not followed it. There was also one key fact missing from the Oprah interview. Harry and Meghan did have a title available for Archie, Earl of Dumbarton. They could have used it, but chose not to. Reports said they were concerned the word dumb in Dumbarton could lead to teasing at school. That was a parental choice, and there is nothing wrong with that. But it matters, because the Oprah interview suggested Archie had been denied titles by an institution against him, when in reality a title had been available and his parents decided not to use it. Harry was asked who made the comments about Archie's skin color, and he said he would never reveal the name. He has never done so. Meghan did not return to the issue either. Their Netflix series in late 2022 did not revisit it or add new facts. What remained was what Bauer's method treats as important: a lasting accusation, serious enough to do major damage, but vague enough to avoid a solid response. If the conversation happened exactly as described, the person involved has never been identified. The monarchy took the full hit, while the real rules around Archie's title received far less attention than the accusation itself. That is the pattern: strong emotion, no named source, and missing context. But the story did not end there. The title dispute eventually did have a conclusion, and very few people paid attention to it.
Baby Archie hasn't been given a royal title. It had been expected that he would inherit the Earl of Dumbarton, which is one of Prince...
On September 8, 2022, Queen Elizabeth II died at Balmoral, and Charles became king. That changed Archie's status automatically under royal rules. He was no longer the great-grandchild of a monarch. He was now the grandchild of a monarch. He was now the grandchild of a monarch. Under the same long-standing rules, Archie became entitled to the title of prince, and Lilibet became entitled to the title of princess. No rule was changed, no exception was made. The system simply moved forward exactly as it had always been meant to do. By early 2023, Harry and Meghan were using prince and princess for both children. Hello reported that Charles and Harry had quietly agreed on this near the end of 2022. A spokesperson for the couple then said the titles had always been the children's birthright from the moment their grandfather became king. That wording matters. It treated the 1917 rules as clear and accepted all along, even though the Oprah interview in March 2021 had helped create a worldwide belief that Archie's title situation reflected racism and institutional hostility inside the monarchy. There was no press conference and no real public acknowledgement of the change. The same couple who had made Archie's title issue a major emotional point in the biggest royal TV interview in history accepted those titles 18 months later with almost no public attention.
Constantly trying to probe the difference between the two. What did you take away from that?
The story had done its job, and when the outcome finally came, it passed with little attention. That is exactly the kind of pattern Bauer focuses on. He is not claiming the original allegation was false, and he's not saying the conversation about skin color never happened. His point is about how the story was managed. What gets pushed hard? When it gets pushed? What gets major coverage? And what is left to a brief statement? The claim about Archie's future was given the full power of a primetime Oprah interview. The outcome, which showed the title rules had worked as they always were meant to, was confirmed quietly and left there. Big attention when the story was useful, very little when it was not. That is the pattern. And once you notice it in Archie's case, you begin to notice it elsewhere too. While the world focused on the Oprah interview in March 2021, another important move had already happened. 3 months earlier, in a birth announcement that gave the palace almost no warning, Harry and Meghan chose a name with deep personal meaning inside the royal family. On June 6, 2021, they announced the birth of their daughter, Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor, born in Santa Barbara, California. Mother and baby were said to be doing well.
Her name is Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor. She is the second child for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
This name hit differently from any royal birth announcement in modern memory. Not because of Diana, which was widely seen as a clear tribute to Harry's mother. It was because of the first name, Lilibet. In 70 years of Queen Elizabeth's reign, that name had never appeared in a public royal announcement, an official palace document, a news broadcast, or a headline. Lilibet was never a public name. It was used only by the Queen's closest circle, especially Prince Philip and a small number of people who had known her before she became monarch. It stayed private for decades by choice because it represented personal closeness and rare access to someone who spent most of her life in public while protecting a few things carefully. Then suddenly, it appeared on a birth certificate in California. The question that followed was simple. Had the Queen been asked, or only informed? Within days, the BBC reported that the palace had not been consulted before the name was announced. A palace source told the BBC the Queen had been informed, not given a chance to approve or refuse. The palace did not push back on that report. Harry's legal team quickly answered with the opposite claim. They said Harry had personally spoken to the Queen before the announcement and that she had supported the name. Both versions remain on the record, and neither has been withdrawn. The issue was never publicly settled. What remains are two conflicting accounts of the same exchange, or perhaps no exchange at all. Bauer's point about the naming was not mainly emotional, it was about timing. By June 2021, Harry and Meghan had already spent 18 months publicly breaking down their relationship with the monarchy.
Of course, this announcement about a great-grandchild for the Queen being announced in a very different way from how we'd expect.
By then, the Oprah interview had aired, the Netflix deal was done, and the couple had fully settled in California. Each step was presented as a break from an institution they said was harmful, controlling, and at times racially hostile. So, when they named their daughter after one of the monarchy's most private symbols, insiders did not see irony. They saw strategy. To them, it looked like a way to keep an emotional link to the royal family while publicly distancing themselves from it. The name also ensured the Queen would appear in every headline about the baby, no matter how strained the relationship seemed. A quieter detail surfaced later and gave the story another layer. In a video Meghan shared from the family's chicken coop in Montecito, Lilibet was heard on camera for the first time. It was a small, everyday moment, but viewers noticed her accent right away, completely American. Clear California, not Kensington. That should not have been surprising. She was born in California, has lived there all her life, and has never spent a single day in Britain. But next to a name so tied to 70 years of private royal history, it stood out. The child, named after one of Britain's most protected royal symbols, has no real connection to Britain itself. She has an American passport and American voice, and will grow up in a country far removed from the meaning that name carries. The first time that name truly appeared on British soil, not in a headline or statement, but in an actual room, was in June 2022. What happened there became one of the clearest windows into the Sussex story.
In honour of the Queen, because that was her childhood nickname. Diana, of course, needs no explanation. That's the name of the late princess.
In June 2022, during the Platinum Jubilee, Britain marked Queen Elizabeth II's 70 years on the throne with 4 days of celebrations, including pageants, concerts, and a service at St. Paul's Cathedral. But the most important moment happened in private, far from the cameras. Harry and Meghan flew in from California with both children after weeks of public guessing about whether they would attend, appear on the Buckingham Palace balcony, or have a tense reunion with the senior royals. Instead, the key event was a private meeting no one outside the room saw. For the first and only time, Queen Elizabeth II met her great-granddaughter, Lilibet, the child named after the Queen's most personal and closely guarded name. No photo of that meeting was ever released. Harry and Meghan had brought their own photographer, clearly hoping to capture the moment of the two Lilibets together. It would have been one of the most powerful royal images in years and guaranteed headlines around the world. But the Queen refused. The meeting was treated as a private family moment, and the palace kept it that way. The photographer got no picture. The explanation later given was precise. The Queen had a bloodshot eye. She had already been seen wearing sunglasses at several Jubilee events, unusual for such formal occasions, and reports said she did not want an unflattering image of herself made public.
The couple hoped to capture a sweet moment between their baby daughter and her great-grandmother. Sadly, it never happened. Now we know why.
Royal insiders gave a much sharper explanation. They said the concern was not the Queen's health but control. The palace reportedly feared that any photo taken by Harry and Meghan's private photographer would not remain private. There were worries it could quickly end up on American television or appear in material tied to the couple's Netflix deal. So before any photo could be taken, the palace made sure none would exist. That matters because of everything surrounding the moment. A child named after the Queen's most private name finally met the woman she was named for. The meeting itself may have been deeply real and emotional, but both sides were still thinking about image. Harry and Meghan wanted the photograph. The palace stopped it. Neither side was simply living the moment without considering what it could become. Queen Elizabeth II died 3 months later, in September 2022. The photo Harry reportedly hoped to take one day, an official image of the two Lilibets together, never happened. That chance was gone for good. When Charles became king, the Jubilee visit also became the last time either child saw him before he took the throne and, as far as is publicly known, the last time he has seen them at all. He has never been publicly photographed with Lilibet and has met her only once. The most emotionally loaded meeting in the Sussex story produced no public image at all. The palace shut down the possibility before it could be used, and years later, that photo still does not exist. After that, 3 more years passed. The children remained in California, mostly out of sight, with their faces and voices rarely made public.
Prince Harry's wish for his children and King Charles to see each other next week is looking less likely. Meghan Markle's.
Then the children's names returned to public view in a new way, tied to a product launch. In April 2026, around Mother's Day in the United States, Meghan's lifestyle brand As Ever introduced 2 premium candles that matched its polished, family-focused image. Early press materials described them very specifically. One candle was said to be inspired by Prince Archie of Sussex's birthdate and the other by Princess Lilibet of Sussex's birthdate. Their full royal titles were built directly into marketing for products being sold for profit. A palace source responded quickly and clearly. The use of the titles was called outrageous. The argument was simple. Queen Elizabeth II had never meant for the Sussex family's royal styles to be used commercially. Titles had already been a major issue during and after the 2020 Sandringham summit, when Harry and Meghan were said to have promised they would step back from using their royal status for financial gain. Critics said those promises had now been broken to help sell candles. But when the collection finally appeared on the As Ever website, the wording had changed. The royal titles were no longer there. There was no correction and no explanation. The candle first described as inspired by Prince Archie of Sussex's birthdate was now said to honor her son Archie's birthdate. Princess Lilibet of Sussex was reduced to simply her daughter Lilibet. The HRH tone, the Sussex styling, and the full royal weight of the titles disappeared from the sales page as quietly as they had first appeared in the press release.
Holiday magic like monetizing the mundane. Oh, it is quite extraordinary. It's basically a tea bag, what you put in your...
But the press release had already gone out. News stories had already been published. The titles had already appeared across dozens of outlets before the website wording was changed. The story was already out there, and the quiet edit came later in a place most people would never think to check. This is the kind of pattern Bauer focuses on. Not guessing motive, but following the sequence. The titles were used at the exact moment they could draw the most commercial attention. They were removed as soon as criticism hit. The coverage in between carried the royal language, even after the sales page no longer did. That sits uneasily beside one of the family's most repeated public claims, protecting their children's privacy. Photos of Archie and Lilibet are rare. Their voices are almost never heard. Their school, friends, and daily lives are kept off camera. The reason has always been the same. The children did not choose public life and should be protected from the machine that comes with the Sussex name. But that same machine, it seems, can also sell candles. And for a time, the children's HRH titles were useful, at least until they became a problem. The candles were only one product. What followed was something bigger. In December 2025, the Archewell Foundation, Harry and Meghan's charity named from the Old English root that inspired Archie's name, quietly announced a restructuring. It would now operate as Archewell Philanthropies. The press materials included something new. For the first time in any official statement tied to Harry and Meghan's professional or charitable work, Archie and Lilibet were named directly. The statement said the new structure would allow Harry, Meghan, and their children to take part in global philanthropic work together as one family unit.
Particularly when it comes to Archibald Foundation.
Yeah, so what they did is if you've got bad news, you wait for a holiday and you...
Their children, just 7 and 5, were named in a formal restructuring document as future participants in a philanthropic project they are far too young to have chosen. On its face, the idea was presented as long-term planning, a family legacy, and that is not unusual. Many family foundations are built to continue across generations, and there's nothing wrong with parents hoping their children might one day carry on their work. But in the larger context, the announcement raised harder questions. The first was about titles. Reports said Harry wanted both children to keep their HRH styles so that when they were older, they could decide for themselves whether to become working royals or remain private. The argument was that the titles preserved choice rather than making the choice for them. Even people close to Harry reportedly struggled with that logic. For years, Harry and Meghan had said the opposite, that their children would be free. Free from royal pressure, from titles, from duty, and from the institution itself. That claim sat at the heart of their departure and helped justify nearly every major decision that followed. So naming the children in a philanthropic restructuring while also pushing to keep their HRH styles did not fit neatly with that message. Inside the palace, the view was far less generous. Royal insiders were said to be clear about what they believe will happen once William becomes king.
And their children could be set to lose their royal titles if and when Prince William becomes monarch.
People close to the palace expected a formal review, a cleanup that would revisit the HRH status of Harry, Meghan, and possibly their children. Few inside the institution believed Archie and Lilibet would grow up keeping royal titles while building public lives in California with the door still open to a royal return. In fact, that idea was reportedly met with quiet disbelief. So two different futures were being shaped around the same two children. Their parents seemed to be holding on to one version, global, philanthropic, title preserved, with royal options left open. The palace appeared to be preparing another, a formal review that would settle the HRH issue on the institution's terms, not the family's. Neither future was chosen by Archie or Lilibet. Then the present stepped in before any of that could play out. In June 2026, it was announced that Harry and Meghan would bring both children to the UK for 5 days, from July 7 to July 11, tied to Invictus events in Birmingham and London. It was presented as a simple family visit and reunion, but there was nothing simple about it. Archie and Lilibet had not been on British soil since June 2022.
Is that both of them, having posed as the victim for so long, are really the aggressors. And what I really thought...
By then, 4 years had passed. Charles had become king and had also been diagnosed with cancer. Lilibet had gone from a 1-year-old with no memory of Britain to a 5-year-old who still had none. Archie had grown from 3 to 7. The distance between the children Charles last saw and the children they are now is huge, and he had not seen either of them during that entire time. So, when the trip was announced, with both children included for 5 days in Britain, it carried far more weight than a normal travel update. For Charles, ill, estranged from Harry and separated from his grandchildren for years, this looked like the moment many had been waiting for. Then the children did not come. The reason given was security. Harry had asked for Metropolitan Police protection for the visit and was refused. He had already fought this issue in court over the protection he and his family should receive as non-working royals visiting the UK, and he lost. His position was clear: without proper security, he could not responsibly bring his children to London. Charles reportedly offered a royal residence, but the children still did not travel. Royal commentator Richard Eden argued that the way the trip was announced changed everything. By presenting it specifically as a family visit with Archie and Lilibet named, rather than simply a Harry visit or a trip by the couple, the emotional stakes of the security dispute became much higher. It no longer looked like a legal argument over police protection. It looked like a grandfather being denied a final chance to see his grandchildren. That framing, and the use of the children's names, created that effect. Whether that was deliberate is impossible to know from the outside, but the impact was clear. Even then, one possible option was still said to be under consideration.
Lots of family intimacies. I don't want to use the word secrets, but it's certainly intimacies, and that's one thing I've learned about.
A planned single-day trip to the UK, outside London, was meant to shrink the security burden while still allowing a family reunion. Without London as an option, and with the Invictus Games fixed as the official reason for the visit, the plan was nearly impossible to pull off. The window kept shrinking. In the end, the visit turned into a story about why the reunion never happened, rather than the reunion itself. The same pattern kept repeating. The announcement stirred emotion. The children's names raised the stakes, the plan fell apart, and the coverage followed. When it was over, Charles still had not seen his grandchildren. The story moved forward. The situation did not. 4 years after the Jubilee, there had been a cancer diagnosis, a royal residence offered and refused, and a trip announced with the children and completed without them. The pattern stayed front and center for anyone watching, which raises the real question no one has answered. When Archie turns 18, he will be old enough to read everything said about him before he could walk, to watch the Oprah interview and understand what his mother said about his skin, and to search his own name and find the candle press release, the charity reshuffle, and the UK visit announced with his name but carried out without him. What does he do then? Does he become a working royal? Stay in California, accept the HRH title his parents fought to keep, or walk away from it the way his father did? No one knows, including Harry and Meghan themselves. That is the part of Tom Bower's argument that has held up and only grown sharper over time. He was not writing about what Harry and Meghan intended. He was writing about what they built. And what they built around these two children is a situation of almost impossible complexity.
Beautiful, effervescent Meghan!
Royal titles held in California, a name adopted and then openly left behind. A charitable future written before either child could read. A grandfather facing cancer who has not seen them in 4 years. Soon enough, Archie and Lilibet stop being supporting characters and become the story themselves. William will be king one day. When that happens, the question of those HRH titles gets answered by the institution, not by Harry, Meghan, or a spokesperson's careful statement. And if the signals from royal insiders are right, the institution's answer will not be the one Harry and Meghan have been preparing for. So what happens to two California-raised children with American accents and British royal titles when the king decides those titles no longer apply? What happens when Archie is old enough to want his own answer? And what if his answer differs from the one his parents have already publicly given on his behalf? Bower's file remains open. His sources keep talking. The story is far from finished. Drop your thoughts in the comments. When William becomes king and the title question gets forced, do Harry and Meghan fight it, accept it, or turn it into the next Oprah moment? If the last 10 years tell us anything, it's this. The quiet moments in the story never stay quiet for long. If this video made you see the Sussex story a little differently, that is exactly what this channel is for. No hot takes. Just timelines, sourcing, and the parts of the story that never made the headline. If you want more of the Bower approach applied to everything since the book came out, subscribe. If you watched all the way here, you already know the question. When William becomes king and those titles get forced, what do you think Harry and Meghan actually do? We genuinely want to know where you land. See you in the next one.